The period of safe, unrestricted global maritime trade is effectively over. Major powers are actively transitioning to privateer navies, targeting and seizing commercial vessels far outside traditional conflict zones. Over the next 6 minutes, we are going to build a customized geopolitical risk matrix. This tool will help you identify exactly where your operations are vulnerable, so you can reroute your sourcing before a distant conflict cuts off your supply. To do this, you need 3 things in front of you right now: your current supplier list, a map of where your customers are located, and a blank spreadsheet. Organizing this data immediately allows you to shield your specific operations before the next unpredictable naval blockade freezes your inventory. Let's build the matrix. Step 1. In your new spreadsheet, create 3 specific columns: agriculture, energy, and manufacturing. In the agriculture column, list all your organic inputs. This includes food components, natural fibers, and any biological raw materials required for your products. Next is the energy column. Energy transport is highly vulnerable to regional strikes. Recent Ukrainian drone attacks on Russian transport hubs knocked up to 1.5 million barrels of daily crude exports offline almost instantly. Document every fuel or petroleum-based product you rely on. Finally, the manufacturing column. When energy flows stop, factories stop. List all your fabricated parts, electronics, and finished goods dependencies here. Trace every input back to the geographic origin of the raw materials, rather than stopping at your direct Tier 1 supplier. Categorizing your components across these 3 sectors exposes the hidden, deep-tier dependencies that can suddenly paralyze an otherwise stable operation. Step 2. We need to identify your exposure to hostile Navy zones. These are regions where military actions function as hard blockades to commercial trade. This map shows 4 primary danger zones: the Persian Gulf, Black Sea, Baltic Sea, and Chinese coast. Recently, the U.S. widened its blockade, seizing a tanker off Sri Lanka. That's thousands of miles from the Persian Gulf, proving military operational ranges are expanding. Define a write-off zone as any littoral area where a hostile navy currently operates or actively projects power. Cross-reference your supplier list with these zones. If any items originate in or pass near these regions, mark them in red on your matrix. Keep in mind, a supplier is compromised if their physical shipping route passes through a red zone, even if their headquarters or factory is located in a completely safe neutral country. Geographical location and transit routes are absolute liabilities. Any reliance on these red zones represents an unacceptable existential risk to your business. Step 3. You must assign a risk timeline to every red item on your matrix to determine exactly how fast a disruption will hit your loading dock. This flowchart of the Russian oil transport system shows how localized damage cascades. Drone strikes severed flow lines to the Baltic. Lacking internal storage, Russia immediately halted production at the source wells. In winter, this freezes pipelines solid, rendering production permanently offline. Look at your red-flagged suppliers. Determine if they hold internal storage buffers in safe locations, or if they possess alternative transit routes entirely separate from the hostile zones. If a supplier lacks those buffers or alternate routes, label their risk timeline as immediate. One drone strike could permanently sever your access to that material. Step 4. Add a final diversification plan column to your spreadsheet. You need to outline one viable alternative for every single red item. Your first diversification tactic is to write it off. If a specific customer base or supplier exists entirely within a hostile zone, immediately halt all capital expansion efforts in that region. The second tactic is nearshoring. Identify suppliers located on your continent. Keeping inputs land-based or strictly regional allows you to bypass transoceanic naval threats entirely. The third tactic is rerouting logistics. If transoceanic shipping is mandatory for a specific component, mandate that your freight forwarders use only uncontested waters. Specifically, instruct them to avoid the Indian Ocean and Sri Lankan shipping lanes so you can dodge the expanding privateer conflicts between U.S. and Iranian forces. This is what a successful matrix looks like. You identify a compromised overseas input, and you actively replace it with a safe domestic one. Executing this plan systematically replaces volatile, contested supply routes with logistics paths that you actually control. You have successfully translated a vague sense of geopolitical anxiety into a concrete, executable resiliency plan. You know exactly what is exposed. Now you must act. Call your new diversified targets today and lock in contracts before your competitors realize their old globalized supply chains are dead. For a deeper understanding of how these logistical breakdowns will impact specific sectors, pick up Peter Zeihan's book, The End of the World is Just the Beginning. It provides a 20-year forecast on where global agriculture, energy, and manufacturing are heading next. Survival in this era of deglobalization belongs exclusively to the businesses that actively decouple their operations from vulnerable systems today. Get to work.